is within the top 5. It's number 5, most common spoken language in New South Wales as well, which I think really highlights the significance of why it's important for us to bring translated versions on information about palliative care.
As per the 2021 census, there were nearly 123,000 Nepalese-born Australians, which was a 124% increase since 2016. And it also suggests why the importance of palliative care information is important in our community at this stage.
So how would you describe when someone's unwell and maybe they may not get better anymore? What do you call that care? And they said to me, care. Right. How about when someone's closer to the end of life, in the last phase of life, and in the terminal phase of life, when they're about to die? And my parents responded to me again, care. So we don't really distinguish. It really highlighted how recognizing that the end-of-life care is a concept that is foreign to most Filipinos. That's why it's important for clinicians to frame end-of-life care as supportive care that can make Filipino patients and their families be more receptive, emphasizing on symptom control, pain alleviation, and prioritization of patient comfort.
And in Nepalese community, concept of palliative care is very new. It's emerging in the country. So when we were going back home, we didn't have an understanding of palliative care. So it's a big shift from active management to palliative care, expressing palliative care in Australia for us. Palliative care is not a very common word that we would discuss within our community. And for us, when we have to explain about palliative care, we would say usually caring for our loved ones at home. That's how we describe, rather than, it's death and dying, or it's about planning for your future. We know that the prognosis is getting short, but we would say making sure we are able to look after our loved ones at home, no matter how short or long the time is. We never discuss about advanced care planning, and it is still a taboo, or it is not a common discussion or topic we would feel comfortable in Australia as well. And it usually is all about the family. When we discuss about palliative care or any care making decision making, it comes to the family.
Family really play a crucial role in decision making, caregiving, and end-of-life rituals as well. As clinicians, when we're providing care, it's really important for us to foster a trusting relationships within the community. The influence of religion on Filipino patients is intimately intertwined with their existential issues at the end of life. What they found as the top 3 aspects considered as good death are maintaining hope and pleasure, having control over the future, and having a good relationship with medical staff, which once again highlights the dotted line within healthcare professionals that within our culture, I think, in particular here, medical staff is viewed highly and quite respected. And so their viewpoint have a strong weight in or influence within the decision-making in the family. Filipino patients may defer to family members, particularly the elders, in making health or treatment decisions. And decision-making is often collectivist and family-centered. So for us clinicians, it's about balancing the act of autonomy versus family-centered care. It's often tricky. As direct discussion about death and dying may be considered disrespectful or unnecessary, especially if it's seen as taking away hope. So referral to palliative care may feel like I'm giving up on the person that I love, where maybe I could do so much more. Pain management. Filipinos characteristically are stoic in painful situations, and some have higher pain tolerance to pain, or apprehensive of becoming addicted to narcotics. Thus, this perception towards pain and pain medication potentially explains why some of them may be reluctant to accept pain medications because of that fear. So, first is around building trust through presence and consistent and compassionate care matters. It's important for us to, as health professionals, to be viewed as allies and often as an extension of their community, as we've highlighted here earlier. Respect for collective decision-making. Family meetings and gentle facilitation of shared understanding can reduce distress and conflict. And respect for collective decision-making may mean balancing individual autonomy once again with family consensus. Communicate with sensitivity. I think it's around framing it around comfort and peace rather than giving up. Because they may avoid talking about death, they may use euphemism, so it's important to explore their preferences first before we launch it. Allow flexibility in visitation. Continuous vigil from family is very common, and expect a large family presence as well.
In Australia, we have got a very young and mobile Nepalese community. Having said that, there are a few older Nepalese migrants who have limited English proficiency. They are not able to understand the whole concept of palliative care if it's in English. So we still need to use interpreters trained in end-of-life care or in palliative care, have translated materials like PALCare, New South Wales have done, and have value-based communication to patients and families, because it's all about the family who makes a decision on the patient's behalf. We are very culturally and spiritually sensitive community. As palliative care physicians or clinicians, we want our clinicians to offer access to rituals, prayer spaces, or spiritual processes. As I said, families are the key decision makers, no matter whether it's in Nepal or in Australia. And clinicians should always ask who the decision makers are, because many a times we find that in Western context, we would love to have conversations with the patient, but here it's usually the family who needs to be involved in the discussion for planning. And talking about death and dying is still a taboo, even though we are educated people living in Australia. I find it hard when I communicate with our community leaders about palliative care, and they would not want to go from there. They would just say, oh, you work in palliative care, but then they wouldn't want to go beyond that to know what palliative care is. It's not only about death and dying. We are not there yet. So it's still a taboo of talking about palliative care.
It's important, I think, highlighting earlier that there's a lot of different regions. It's important for us to ask if there are any particular practice with it that is important in their family at this time. The presence of priest or chaplain near the end of life for anointing the sick or the last rite is highly valued and is essential for peace. And some families may integrate folk practices or superstition with religious practices as well. Immediately after that, a rosary or religious item may be placed with the person to protect the soul. Mirrors are covered after death to prevent spirits from being trapped. And immediate family members would avoid wearing red up to a year. During the wake, relatives and friends visit for days, bringing food and financial contributions. And sweeping floor or taking a bath after a wake is avoided as well to prevent bad luck. Practices that happens after the burial period is around the 9 days prayer consecutively, and then the 40th day celebration to mark the soul's journey to eternity. All Souls Day, and this involves visiting graves, cleaning tombs, and sharing foods. And you can see in this image over here that sometimes, and in some description as well, that during this time, the atmosphere would almost become like a party, but at the same time, a day for remembering. So they light candles, offer food, and visiting graves to honor the dead. In summary, for many Filipino patients and families, dying is not just a medical event, but a spiritual, familial, and social experience.
As I said, because we have a different ethnic groups, the pre-death rituals vary depending on which part of Nepal you belong to. And I'm just trying to focus on Hindus and Buddhist community. There are two rituals that are very common within both religions. It is about placing small amounts of water containing holy basil leaves, which is called tulsi in our language, into the dying person's mouth, as if we know that the time is getting shorter and shorter. And it is usually done by the immediate family members, for example. The other ritual that we commonly share between Hindu and the Buddhist community is having a dying person hold the tail of a cow, with the belief that it enables the passage of the soul to go to the next life, because we believe in reincarnation and rebirth again. In Hindu context, loved ones would usually spend time reading the holy books like Gita, which is again a belief that this gives the soul a peace to move on from their death. And in Buddhist context, we usually ask monks to visit our house, where the person is going to die or after death. We usually continue having those monks visit every day for first 13 days of death, and then once a week for next 49 days of death. So this is a long process. Relatives and uh, neighbors visits the house after death every day to do some rituals, like to do a praying or to make sure that there's someone who is sitting next to the person who is going through that process for 14 days of post 14 days after passing. So just to make sure that it's a peaceful transition to the heaven or to the reincarnation or to rebirth of the person again. And always bereavement and grieving is such a challenging part because we have got so many rituals happening post death. In both Hindu and in the Buddhist context, that there is no time to have those process of grieving for the next 49 days. But mostly the bereavement and grieving process starts after the 49 days of the passing, because that's when everybody would start to move back to normal, whereas the family would be going through that phase because it's going to be the time where they would self-reflect.